Welcome, I'm Darren, and I'll be your guide today as I rank the worst insert card designs in football in 1994. When I put together this list, I was surprised at the variety of designs that I was looking at because I've been noticing in recent times that there's been, or during the 1993 and 1994 runs, there have been kind of like groups of card designs where there have been a couple of cards that have been fairly similar. In this case, for the most part, all of these designs are very different. There is a bit of an exception to that, which is the fact that I do have a couple of clusters of cards that were all released by the same company. So the company might have had 2 or 3 designs that had some similarities to them. I'm going to be talking about those as one. So it's not going to be, convoluting the list by any stretch of the imagination. But I do like the variety of the cards that I pulled out. And on top of that, I do have a 5 worst and then one clear honorable mention, but I have 3 others that I'm also going to be talking about that I want to just kind of brush up on why they're peripheral to this list. And the first one is actually one of those that is multiple releases by one card company, which is Playoff, and not Contenders, because Contenders was actually pretty successful. I'm talking about Playoff proper. And in the case of Playoff in 1994, I don't think the cards were really much better than 1992 and 1993. The inserts, however, I was surprised to find were actually better than I expected. And I might need to go back and revisit the 1993 inserts, because the Playoff club cards I figured would definitely be on this list, until I took the time to actually look at it and I realized it's actually a really good use of the Techchrome technology. Because with Techchrome, it's tough to take that and utilize it to any great extent. And yet with the Playoff Club cards, they actually kind of pull it off. You have the black and white outer part of the image, and then you have the box inside with color in it. And the color is not ostentatious, but it gives a cool quality to the difference between the black and white and the color. But there's a lot of care that's put into this card. Obviously not on the back. The backs of these cards are unbelievably bad. How they were still doing this in 94, I don't know. But the front was well crafted, and I realized over the years, this has been one of those cards that I never looked at because they're set fillers. You just kind of get that done on your checklist, you move on. But when I looked at the card, I went, well, it's a good image. It's the way that the inner box is designed and the way that all that comes together, it's well crafted. Even when you go off to the Playoff collection cards, which could easily be a train wreck. Here are 5 cards for each player where it's a little look at their career. And the background behind the player is all of that text, and then you have the mirror chrome surface on it, and then the image is on the front of that. It could easily become kind of a train wreck, and yet it's not. In each one of the cases, it just does an amazing job of showcasing the player. These are cards that are well prepared. They're well crafted on the card front, not the card back, but on the card front, to the point where the cards do look good. They do what they're supposed to do. I'm not going to say that I like them, but it's a shame that they are so understated that I never noticed them. But now that I'm looking at them, I think they're pretty strong. So these cards I wanted to be on the list, but they don't fit. Conversely, I guess I shouldn't say conversely, but I also have Pacific for the Prism cards in their main Pacific release. Marquee Prism cards are cards I've always kind of looked down on because they don't have the liveliness of the main Prism set cards. That box down at the bottom doesn't really fit, but that's because I've been working with card pages, and on a card page, no, it does not fit at all. But when you look on an individual basis, the whole pattern, those little circles, I don't like those little circles, but they create a scale, and that scale works with the detail in the image and the detail of the marquee. And once you get to a one card basis and you look at how that scale comes across, it is really strong. It actually works. This is the first time that a Prism card has worked. Not look great, but at least it works. And then over on the Knights of the Gridiron, these cards are more like the traditional Pacific Prism card set cards. But these are all in gold, and that gives it a nice advantage. So when I look at them, they still have a lot of issues, but they are Prism cards that are actually starting to succeed, and it's getting close to where they'll make a Prism card that actually is good. So it's progress, but you know. And then I also wanted to mention about the Stadium Club Ringleaders cards. And this is a card where the effect on that background is so cool. It's so impressive. The way that it has, you know, the moving light pattern is great. And then you get the sparkliness in the rings that's so cool. It's almost like a firework explosion. Then you have the little fluttering lights just afterwards. That kind of a thing is a really great success quality to this card. The problem that the card has, though, is that, look, I really like simplistic cards where it allows the technology to come through. But in this case, they did that, and they added interest by just sticking two rings on there that the scale isn't very good. It doesn't fit with anything in the card. It's kind of obnoxious on the card. And then the picture of the player, he is just like pasted on to this card. This card is not a success pretty much in any way, because there are a lot of things that it wants to do, and in my opinion, it doesn't do any of those things well except for the effect. The effect is the thing that's great, and I wish that they had used this effect that they had taken the time to do a well-crafted card to show off the technique. I don't think this is a success, but you can look over at baseball and see something that is much better at it. In this case, it looks wrong. Every time I look at it, I just go, I guess they tried. But that brings me to the one true honorable mention, which is Pinnacle Performers. This is a card that for years I just thought, I just naturally assumed that it was a standalone card set that they sold separately. You know, I have never encountered these in packs, but apparently they were in packs. And when I look at the card, I just go, well, what a disappointment to get in a pack, because there's nothing going on with the card. It has a mirrored chrome finish. It has not much of a design to it. So it's boring. The player is kind of overwhelmed by an understated card. It's really kind of a weird mess of things. And if this was what I pulled out of a pack, I'd want to throw it back and hope for something better. That's kind of the problem that this card has. It's you got to be in the right, or I've got to be in the right mood to appreciate the card, and well, this certainly isn't the time that I'm in that mood. But that does lead me to the top 5. And at number 5, I have Fleer Ultra, the Rick Myra cards. And these cards are pretty fancy. They seem fancy, they look fancy, but the design is horrendous. You have the large image behind that's all in one color, and then you have an action shot in the front that is overpowered by the card back. There's no point where I can see the image on the front clearly, but I can see the image on the back clearly. And on top of that, the image on the background it's not even consistent. It keeps changing, sometimes with color, which means that I can't even get into the groove of, in my mind, blocking out this common background because it's always changing. It's a card that tried too much to do one thing, but it ended up doing the opposite by making the background too strong. They should have diluted it in some way to make it kind of work. They didn't. And so this is a card that, for me, it's all about the background, and I don't like that. And it's interesting that Fleer is also a card that only has one item on this list, number 4, which is Provision. And to be fair, there are a couple of cases where I have more than one from a single release, but I'm looking at them together. With Fleer, I don't know why this is the only card that did not succeed, but the Provision cards, boy, oh boy, did these not succeed. In 1991, they did great art for their cards. I mean, these are gorgeous looking cards. The design itself is actually pretty good to go with it as well. By 1993, well, okay, now we got a problem because they're subset cards and they just didn't put the heart into it. But then when you get around to 1994, well, now we're back to inserts because all the subsets became inserts, And they got rid of the borders so that they could really allow the art to shine, but now the art is not the kind of art you want to be looking at. You go back to 1991 again, look at this card. This is so cool. And if you did this as borderless with all of this, the nature of the art, the excitement of it, this would probably look like a great card with no border. But in 1994, they were doing this pop art stuff that just is, I don't know. I don't like it, and I doubt there are very many people out there who do. It's too much of not enough. It's kind of that mess of a situation. So that's why I have a number 4. But then at number 3, I have a card that is now finally just, this is bad. And that is Skybox Revolution. And the Revolution cards, the problem for these cards is that I get the idea. You want to make a picture frame. And in doing that, you want to have what I guess is supposed to be platinum, probably not pewter, but a picture frame that is of a metal. And then you have little lines that are kind of like the carvings in the picture frame. Okay, I get what they're trying to do. But problem number 1, that's too much foil. Proline already learned from 92 and 93, don't put too much gold foil on there and condense the space for the image. In this case, they did exactly the same thing. There's a little bit thinner of a border, which helps, and it's not gold foil, it's silver foil, which might help. But you got to break it up. And if you did like inner lines, that might work. But all of these little squiggles are just terrible. And so the image of the player in the middle is just totally lost in this card. And it just does not work at all. And there's nothing interesting about this card at all. Which begs the question, if this is at number 3, then what do I have at number 2? Well, I have Score Dream Team. And boy, this is a card that literally bothers me. It annoys me. Dream Team was a great subset, and then it could also be a great insert set. 1991 is one of the all-time great subset cards, period, with their Dream Team cards. By 1994, this is what they've left us with. The problem here is, okay, you're doing a hologram, all right, I get it. Upper Deck in 1991 and into 1992 learned how to really master holograms. In 1992, we certainly did have, we had some holograms, whether it's from Arena or, we had the ability to see some holograms that did not succeed too well. Skybox certainly was a great example of that. Now we're in 1994. There's no excuse for doing a multi-plane, congested card that doesn't really do much at all. And most of the time, the card, it's almost impossible to get the colors to look right. And there are different things happening at different times, which means the part of the card is never going to look right. There's always going to be at least part of the card that looks bad. So while I do like the fact they have 2 images in the background, that's about the only thing I got going for this. Otherwise, this looks pedestrian. Looks like what they should have done years ago and not today. Again, a real shame for Dream Team that they were stuck with this 1994 design, but they were. So that's my number 2. But for number 1, I got to go with Action Packed. And Action Packed, well, let's start off with the Fantasy Forecast cards. The Fantasy Forecast cards, I don't entirely know what they were trying to do with these cards. The big thing that has always bothered me is that the cards have basically nothing going on. I mean, they have the Action Packed logo, which is good, but up on the other corner, they have that football with the heat sensitive thing, which always looks to me like it is some cheap thing thrown onto a cheap card. This card does not ever feel like a professional card. Even the card back doesn't quite do it. Only the image works. And they were counting on the images to hold up. And the images do look really good. I'm absolutely going to acknowledge that. But the images don't grab you and pull you in. They're well selected. The background, the way that that's done is good, but you have to give it the time. And there's always that black football up at the top because it's not showing you the number. It's showing you just the football. Every time I look at it, I'm disappointed by it because, I mean, what is there to pull me in? What in the world is there to pull me in? Nothing. But what's even worse is they once again did their quarterback cards with the silver foil over the surface of the card. And I will grant you, they also had cards for most of the players, or many of the players at least, that are in full color. And so you can actually line that up with the silver card, and you can see the relationship between the two. Not that that's good, but at least you can see that. You add the gold card in, and now it's a whole lot better. So when I look at at these cards, I see laziness. That's what it comes across as. Just this idea of, well, we're going to put it out there and people are going to be so excited that we did that. Well, there are other inserts from 1994 to get excited about. These are not the ones. So that's where I put the list of the worst insert card designs for football in 1994. If you disagree with my order, definitely let me know down in the comments below. I'm always curious to hear how people view this differently to myself. And let's see. So I've already done the main sets and the inserts. I've already done that in the past. So definitely check those out if you haven't had a chance. I'm going to be doing basketball, then hockey, then baseball, I believe, are the next 3. So you can look forward to those. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, I do urge you to do so. And thank you very much for watching.